Late at night, when the office lights had dimmed and silence filled the towering corporate building, Michael pushed his mop across the marble floor. He was the kind of man most people barely noticed, a quiet janitor, always polite, always working. What no one saw was the life he lived outside those walls. Michael was a single father, raising his little girl with every ounce of strength he had. She was his reason for working long hours, his reason for smiling through exhaustion. At home, when the world was quiet and only his daughter was watching, Michael had another side to him. In their small apartment sat an old, second-hand piano. Its keys were chipped, its wood worn, but when Michael sat down to play, magic seemed to pour out. His daughter would curl up on the couch, eyes wide with wonder, as her father's hands brought melodies to life, melodies full of love, struggle, and dreams he never spoke aloud. But in the corporate world where he mopped floors, no one knew. To them, he was just Michael the janitor, dependable, invisible, ordinary. They never imagined that behind his tired eyes lived an artist, a man with a gift that could touch hearts. Michael never sought recognition. His music belonged to the quiet corners of his life, to the little girl who clapped for him like he was the greatest pianist in the world. And so, every night, as he worked beneath the glittering chandeliers of the lobby, his secret remained hidden. During a busy afternoon, the company's grand lobby buzzed with chatter as employees prepared for a corporate event. A glossy black piano stood at the center of the room, meant to impress visiting guests. A few young staff members, spotting Michael nearby with his cleaning cart, exchanged smirks. To them, he was just the janitor, someone ordinary, someone beneath notice. With playful mockery, one of them called out, "Hey Michael, why don't you play us something?" Laughter rippled through the group, their voices tinged with sarcasm. They expected him to blush, to wave it off, to retreat in embarrassment. Michael froze, his hands tightening on the mop handle. He felt the sting of their laughter, the familiar burn of being overlooked and underestimated. For a moment, he thought of simply walking away. But then, a memory of his daughter's face came to him, how she beamed whenever he played at home, how she whispered, "Daddy, you're amazing." Taking a slow breath, Michael surprised everyone by setting the mop aside and stepping toward the piano. The room grew quieter, curiosity replacing the laughter. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. He hadn't played in front of strangers in years, and certainly never in a place like this. The smirks lingered, but so did the silence. Then, with quiet determination, Michael pressed the first key. A single note rang out, delicate yet powerful, signaling that something far different from a joke was about to unfold. The moment Michael's fingers touched the keys, the air shifted. Soft, gentle notes drifted into the room, each one carrying a depth of emotion no one expected. The laughter that had filled the space just moments before melted into silence. His hands moved with surprising grace, weaving together a melody that seemed to rise from someplace deep within his soul. The music spoke of long nights, of quiet sacrifices, of love too strong to be broken by hardship. Every chord seemed to carry his journey, the loneliness of raising his daughter alone, the exhaustion of working endless shifts, and the tender joy of finding hope in the smallest moments. Employees who had once been smirking now stood frozen, their eyes locked on Michael as if seeing him for the first time. Conversations halted, glasses paused midair, and even footsteps slowed to stillness. The melody filled every corner of the lobby, wrapping itself around every listener. It wasn't just music, it was a story, and it was touching hearts in ways words never could. By the time Michael reached the crescendo, the room was transfixed. His passion, his pain, his love, all of it flowed into the piano, transforming what had begun as a cruel joke into a moment of undeniable beauty. Those who thought they were mocking him now found themselves breathless, unsure whether to applaud or simply stand in awe of what they were witnessing. Michael, lost in the music, played as if the world beyond those notes didn't exist. As the final notes swelled, the music seemed to linger in the air like a whispered prayer. In the back of the room, the CEO, an older man known for his stern demeanor, stood motionless, his eyes fixed on Michael. What no one knew was that years ago, his late father had played that very same piece on their family piano. Hearing it now, in the most unexpected place, struck a chord deep within him. The melody pulled memories from the depths of his heart, of childhood evenings spent listening to his father play, of a warmth and love he hadn't felt in years. His vision blurred as tears welled up, unbidden and unstoppable. For a man who rarely showed emotion, it was startling even to himself. Around him, employees were equally moved, some wiping their eyes quietly, others simply standing in stunned silence. The music reached its final peak, and then Michael let his hands fall gently from the keys. The last note hung in the air before fading into silence. For a moment, no one dared to move. The only sound was the echo of the piano still vibrating faintly, as if reluctant to let go of the story it had just told. Michael, his heart pounding, slowly stood. He expected awkward laughter, maybe a few dismissive claps. Instead, he looked up to see faces transformed, humbled, softened, and deeply touched. And among them, the CEO, with tears streaming down his face, stepped forward. The silence broke into a wave of applause that shook the room. People who only moments earlier had seen Michael as invisible were now on their feet, clapping, cheering, some even wiping away tears. Michael stood there stunned, unsure how to respond, his calloused hands still trembling from the performance. Then the CEO approached him, no longer the untouchable figure of authority but simply a man moved to his core. With emotion still in his voice, he said, "That wasn't just music, you reminded us what heart sounds like." The words caught Michael off guard. For so long he had lived in the shadows, his gift known only to his daughter, yet here he was, standing in the center of attention, not as a janitor but as an artist who had touched every soul in the room. The CEO placed a hand on his shoulder and added softly, "Talent like yours doesn't belong hidden. We'll make sure it's seen." It wasn't just a promise of recognition, but of respect, a respect Michael had never expected to find in that place. When he returned home that night, his daughter rushed into his arms as always. But this time, Michael held her tighter, his heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time, he believed the world might finally see him the way she always had, not as a man defined by his struggles, but as someone who carried beauty and strength within. And that belief changed everything.